All right, guys, welcome back. We have 3 people that rejoin. So let's wait for a bit, like a minute, so that all others can join as well. So we have answered question 1 and 2. We are going to the third one. So let's look at the third question. That talks about the graph. Yes?
Before it went off, you were about to explain something. I don't know if you forgot.
Okay, go on. Let me. What's your question? Okay.
I said
Yes.
before the thing went off, you were trying to explain something about the figures.
Yes. I was.
So I don't know if you.
I'm not getting you very well. Can you speak louder, or I don't know? You get closer to the.
Okay. I'm saying, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm getting you now. Huh?
You were trying to explain something about the figures.
Yeah. What I was saying, I said now we did the calculation. We find the equilibrium price for the beef, for the pork. We find the quantities as well. But I said that's not the end of the stories. Let's go and try to see what's the economic intuition behind those numbers. I think that's what I was trying to put across.
Okay.
Yeah. So this graph will help you, to visualize, what we have been doing, because what we have been doing is more of algebra, something like that. But now let's look at the geometry part of this equation or problem. So let's see. This is the beef market. And we say this is let's just say pork market here. We have pork market here. Obviously, we have these 2 markets, whereby each of the markets, they have their quantity supplied and quantity demanded. Obviously, our famous graph, we can do it. Like we have price. Let's say this is the price of beef. So we will have, this is the demand. Obviously, this will be supply. So here, this will be the demand, and this will be supply. So where they meet, we have to know this. How do we calculate this? And how do we calculate this? So here in the pork market, the same thing will apply. So in the pork market is the same scenario, where we will have this as the supply, and then we have demand. So we will have this here. We'll have different points as well. So here we can say it's just the price. Is the price of what? Pork. Here is what the quantity demanded of beef. Here is what the quantity demanded for pork. Obviously, we have calculated this. We know them already. So the price of beef was what? 5. And the quantity demanded at equilibrium was, I think, 70. So here it was 3, and here we have 90. We have all these already. So what about this point? How can we calculate them? This is It's possible. It's just about the intercept. So when you want to calculate these 2 points, you have to ask 2 questions. First, you'll deal with demand. You look at the beef market because these points are demand curve. Our demand was what? Quantity demanded. This was the formula is equals to 82 minus 3 times the price this, then plus P. So here, this is a point, is the demand for, it's a demand for beef when the prices are 0. So obviously, if the prices are 0, you understand, if the price of beef is 0, and the price of pork is 0, so if you substitute here, this will be 0, this will be 0. So the quantity demanded for beef will be what? 82. So you can have this here as the 82. So this 82 is the price at which, when is the quantity demanded for beef, when both price of beef and the price of pork is 0, is 82. So some people will call this as the intercept, or quantity demanded intercept. So you do the same thing for this one, for the pork market. So all these points could be calculated by asking yourself, here what it's saying, if the price of beef and pork is 0, this is what we will have, 82. But at the end of the day, the most important 2 points is these ones. That is the equilibrium price and the quantity. So with intercepts, it's too early. I'm just introducing it, but we will spend more time when we start function and calculus as well. We will be calculating intercepts and others. But so far, what you need to know and to be able to calculate is these 2 points. We should be able to calculate those ones. Is there any question that we can talk about, or you have a question or a comment? Any question, comment?
No, sir.
Mr. Ture,
Yes.
what I'm asking is like this simultaneous equation, like the formula, you can cram it or you have to show the working, like how you get the CE minus BF over by AE minus BD.
It depends on how the question comes. If the question is asking for this case, you understand, you just need to know it. But the derivation of it, I think we did it together. You should be able to drive it. A question in itself can even ask you how to drive that formula. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Okay, no problem.
So the point is, you should not only be able, you know the formula, but how did the formula comes about? In high school, we just memorize the formula. But this is another layer to high school. You should be able to know how this formula came about. You should be able to drive it. Because at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you find yourself in Brikama, but you don't know how you get there. This is another layer to university. So we should be able to, whatever we did in class is important. We should be able to do it. So those are some of the, actually, I think I will go on and solve all the intercepts, this area. So what I will do, is there any other question? Okay, so I will go on and even solve all these intercepts or points, but that is going to take our time. So for now, maybe let's stop here. We will see more of intercepts and orders when we start doing coordinates, derivatives, and order differentiation. So for the purpose of this question, you should be able to come up to this point and do it. This is a basic maths course, but we can even do even more static analysis. For example, let's ask ourselves, if the price of pork increase, this is pork market. If the price of pork increase, if this increase, how is it going to affect the beef market? Anyone who wants to try, if you have done basic economics, you should be able to answer that. If the price increases from 3 to 4 here in this market, how is it going to affect the beef market? These are economics courses, economic questions. I just want to share with you that we can do a lot of analysis with these two diagrams.
Okay.
So let's assume that the price of pork increases. What is going to happen in the beef market?
The demand of beef will increase.
Exactly. And if the demand of beef increase, what will happen to the demand curve?
I think it will shift
Yeah, it will shift to where?
to the right,
Sorry?
to the right side.
Exactly. So once this increase, okay, let's end here. This is the end of our question, but let's go and do further analysis. This is where the course we should stop, but let's go and do further analysis for knowledge consumption. Now we have these two markets. We have this here. We have this, and this was 70, I guess, for the beef. We have was 5, yeah, 5. So this is the price of beef. So we have pork on the other side, and we have this one as it was 90. Then we have 3. So this is what we did in the last slide. So we can do some static analysis. But before we even do static analysis, let's go back and look at the equations. Here, it's important to be able to calculate it, but we have to build our economic intuition. It's very, very important. Like, let's say that the quantity demanded for beef was given to us as a 82 minus 3 times the price of beef plus the price of pork. And they said the quantity that was supplied in the beef market is estimated by this equation, minus 5 plus 15 times the price of beef. So here in the pork market, the quantity that was demanded for pork was estimated by this equation, 92 plus 2 times the price of beef minus 4 times the price of pork. And the quantity, before we even go to the graph, let's look at this algebraic equation and try to analyze and interpret them with economic intuition. Equals to minus 6. The prerequisite for this course is that you have taken basic economic course as well as accounting. So let's look at this. We are looking at 2 markets here. We have the pork, beef market. And then here we have pork market. So if you look at this, first, obviously, it is telling you that there is a relationship between these 2 markets. And if you look at economic relationship, it's either what? It's either substitute relationship or complement. Two goods are either substitute or complement. So how do we know that from these equations? How do we know that these two goods are beef or pork? Who wants to try? How can you look at this equation and know that, okay, these are substitute goods or complement good? Forget the graphs. Let's forget the geometry for now. Let's forget the graphs. Just look at this. By looking at this, can you know or determine that what kind of relationship pork and beef they have? Anyone who wants to try?
I think it's supplementary.
This is complete, it's not supplement, it's complementary goods. Complementary goods, example can be, let me give a good example. A book and a pen, they are complementary goods. They complement each other. If you have a book, you need a pen to write. So substitute good is just like mayonnaise and butter. You can use one of them, to satisfy your utility or your need. So obviously beef and pork, depending on the consumer, the person in the question, can be a substitute good for each other. But how do we know that? Let's forget about our individual ones or individual preference, but let's look at these equations. Either here or here, it can tell you whether these two goods are substitute or not. Okay, let me go on and answer that. Let's focus for now. For now, let's focus on this. We have, this is what quantity demanded for beef. This is what? The price of pork. What is the sign here? The sign there is positive. And when the sign is positive, then obviously they are what? They have substitute. The two goods are substitute goods. If you come here also, you will have plus sign. This is quantity demanded for beef. Then we have price for, the price of beef is here. What is the sign in front of it? Is plus. So obviously they are substitute goods. So meaning that, if you don't have beef, depending on the person, the consumer in the question, if you don't have beef, you can use pork instead. Or if you don't have pork, you can use instead. You can use beef. Had it been that the sign here is minus and here also is minus, then we will say that they are complementary goods, meaning that they complement each other. So this is telling you that in the beef market here, the price of pork is affecting the quantity demanded of beef. So here also is telling you that the price of beef is positively affecting the quantity demanded of pork. But when you come to their supplies, the price of pork, it doesn't have impact on the supply of beef. Likewise here also. So it is important when you look at this kind of problems, you should be able to give economic interpretation to them. It's not all about calculating. Most of this calculation, when you do advanced courses or when you start practicing as an economics, we have softwares that can do for you. Your real skill set will come how you interpret them. Are you good at interpreting them?
Okay.
So you looked at this equation. You can even before starting, once you looked at it, you will tell whether they are substitute good or complement goods. So how do you know that you looked at it, how the price of one affect the quantity demanded of the other? Let's look at here. This is a quantity demanded of beef. Then we have what? The price of pork. So we are saying that if the price, this plus sign is telling you that if the price of pork increase, the quantity demanded for beef will increase. How? Because if the price of pork increase, people will stop buying pork and they will start buying beef. And once they start buying beef, this quantity demanded of beef will increase. So this is increasing, this is increasing. That's why we have this sign here as a positive sign. So now that we understand the algebraic interpretation of these things, let's go to the graph and try to visualize it. Let's ask ourselves, if the price of pork increase, what will happen in the markets? First, we are saying that if the price of pork increase, first, let's say that it increased to here, 4, from 3 to 4. Obviously, the quantity demanded will be this, and the suppliers will supply more. And because the price increases, this will increase, and it will have impact on here. So the demand for beef, let's say this is supply, this is supply, this is demand, this is quantity demanded for pork, and this is beef. So when there is an increase in the price of pork from here to here, there will even be what? A surplus in the market for pork. So suppliers will increase their supply beyond 90. Let's even assume this is 100. This is not part of the question. I'm trying to give you further analysis. You understand? So the surplus will increase to 100. And this is now the quantity that is supplied for pork. And the quantity demanded, it will reduce from 90, let's assume, to 70. Because of this higher price, some of the buyers will change their demand for pork, and they will come to the beef market and increase their demand for the beef. And because the demand increase, that will also put further pressure on price. The price will go up, most maybe to, let's say, 7. So they will settle here. This is basic economics. But the key here is it's important for our course, our course objective. We should be able to grab this, and we know whether these two goods are complementary or substitute goods. If you go on to do dynamics of mathematical economics, you will you see some of this static and dynamic analysis. Any question? The key is to know here, what's the relationship? This sign will tell you, always pay attention to that sign. It will tell you, because this demand here and the demand here, the demand for beef and the demand for pork, within that equations, you have what? A variable, a pork variable, which is this affecting the demand. You have a beef variable affecting the demand for pork. So how it affects it, it depends on the sign here. If it's positive, we say that they are substitute goods. If it's negative, we say they are complementary goods. So with this shift, I'm just trying to increase your knowledge of economics or something like that, but it's not part of this question for now. If you have a question, comment, observation that you want us to discuss, you can bring it forward. Before we end the class, I have shared some materials with you, is functions. I think we are, bit by bit, we are entering into derivatives and differentiation, but we need to build the foundation for it. I learned that people are coming from different backgrounds. Some of you might have seen this already. So if you have anything you want to talk, we want to share, you can bring it, please.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Go on, please.
Okay, Mr. Alfred, can we send differ?
Sorry?
This is like, for example, the price of
Yes.
For example, when it is negative,
First, let's be specific. Which market are you looking at?
beef.
Are you looking at here, right?
For example, yes, when I'm comparing them,
Okay.
so if the price of pork is positive,
Okay, yeah, like here, positive, yes.
yes,
Okay.
and if you go to the quantity demand of pork
Okay.
and the price of beef is negative,
Yes.
so how
Oh, okay.
that will be?
I understand. Actually, I assume that you, because normally this is what you normally do in high school. Okay, let me go on. Like, this is a quantity demanded for beef. So here, I didn't talk about the price of beef here because always the demand, remember, what is the law of demand? Price and demand, price and quantity demanded, they are what? Inversely related, or in another word, they are negatively related. So the quantity demanded for beef and its own price, which is this, always will be negative. So if you come to here, the quantity demanded for beef and the price for beef will always be negative. So if you look at here is negative, here is negative, which will always be negative because that's the law of demand.
Okay.
That is the law of demand. You understand? I didn't talk about it because high school, this is what we have been doing. It's only one price we will see in the equation. I didn't talk about it because I assume it's not, but that's it. So the quantity demanded, again, I'm repeating the question he asked, that what should be the relationship between quantity demanded of beef and its own price? Here will always be negative. So if you come to the pork market, the quantity demanded for pork and the price of pork, here it will always be negative. This was the question he asked.
Okay. I understand.
Any other question, comments that, or anything you want to share with the class, if not question? Let's just take the notes, watch the videos. I will share other, I share exercises. If you have been solving those exercises, you should be fine. So our next topic will be functions. And I will, normally the goal is to end the lectures here, but I will briefly introduce functions. I have shared the materials in the WhatsApp group. I guess everyone have access to that group by now. So I will briefly introduce functions. You can read it next, I don't know, next week is, I don't know, this feast. So our next class, then we will start functions. So basically, when we talked about function, it's not that, I cannot say this exactly equations, but they have similarities. I'm not going to spend my time here trying to distinguish what is function, something like that. Those are for higher mathematics. But basically, when they talk about function, I want you to remember one or two things, which is key. So, but before that, the course, what I shared with you, what we wanted to achieve is very simple. We want to know what is a function. This is just a very simple, basic definition. What is a function? So basically, function, when you hear function, it just shows a relationship between two variables. So within a function, you have an input that is used. You understand? It's an input that is kind of like you put an input into a machine, then you have an output. We will look at this in broader detail. So let's just say this is 2.1. So also we will also do evaluating functions. So you will be given a function and you are asked to calculate or evaluate or simplify, something like that. Evaluating a function. We will look at this. And another thing that we will look at, this is chapter 2. Evaluating function, finding domain of a function. So I share all this is in that materials, very straightforward, very simple to read. Finding domain of a function. How do we find the domain of a function? And another objective that we want to achieve in chapter 2 under section 2.1 is we want to also look at piecewise function. So when we talk about piecewise function, it's just like we are talking about one function, but within this one function, it has different parts whereby the behavior of the function changes from one point to another. Maybe the first 10 variables, it is having a linear function or linear equation, but the second part is having quadratics. So we look at those kind of functions as well, piecewise defined functions. We will look at this. Then all what we are doing is preparing you towards advanced maths like calculus and others. Then we also look at some of the functions in economics. So functions in economics. And businesses as well. When we said economics, please don't just see it as business or all our social sciences, they are all part of functions in economics or businesses, etc. Then we also looked at what? Composite functions. So this is what we will look at as we go on. So the materials I share with you covers all this. I don't know whether you guys have received it at what I sent it. So these are some of, okay, so you can go through this next class, and I will solve 1 or 2 examples, and then if you have any questions, any challenges in reading the materials, you can bring it up and we looked at it together. So that's what we are going to be looking at. So once we finish these functions, then I think we will start, it depends on the time. If it's a normal class, by then I'm sure we could have finished this function and something like that. But this is what we have, we manage with it as well. It's like we are not going back to classroom anytime soon. So you can read these stuffs. So basically, I don't like definitions in mathematics, but when we talk about functions, one thing I want you to know, it's just shows, know that it shows relationships. So relationship, between or among variables. It shows relationships, and you should know that it shows relationship to be more, let's say, just say between variables. So sometimes you will say you can say a study or a student grade is a function of the hours he or she studies. Let's say the students, the grade is represented by G. This is the grade. And the number of hours he or she studies is what? H. So if we want to do this function, we can represent this G is a function of H. So how do we call this? We don't say G times H. No, it's wrong. is G is a function of H. G is we read it as this, G is a function of H. Mathematically, we call it like this, but in plain language or in common language, we can just say that the number of G is what, remember we said what G is what? Grade of a student. And H is what? Hours studied. So in plain English, we can just say that, I understand. When we say G is a function of H, this is H. What we are saying that G depends on H. So we can even state this. We said G as a function of H equals to what? H plus 2. So this is a function. So one thing you have to know, how do you recognize function, is these symbols. So the first thing that you should know is this, it shows a relationship between variables. So in this case, we are looking at a relationship between the grade of a student and what? The hours studied. So if we state that we are saying that G is a function of H equals to H plus 2, we have this formula. So we can go on and say that if we have this, let's say we have a table like this, H, and we have G of H. So we have this. Let's say a student, one student study only 1 hour, another study 2, another study 3. You will not find this in the materials I shared. I'm just trying to give you a general explanation what a function is. First, you have to know that it just shows a relationship between 2 or more variables. So it's represented by symbols like this. So in textbook, this is G, but it can be F, it can be K, it can be M, it can be I. So now we have this. Now this formula is given to us. So if a student study 1 hour, then the grade that student will have will be 1 plus 2. This will give you what? 3. If a student study 2 hours, the grade the student will have is 4. Then here we will have 3 and 2, that will give us 5. So this H is the what is the input. So the G of H is what is the output. So in mathematics, this input, we call them as domain. So the output in mathematics, we call them as what? Range. So if you looked at this very well, this is a general introduction to functions. So if you look at function, it just shows how inputs are related to the output. So the machine, we can even say that function can be just like this. So these are the inputs, which is, in this case is H. And then you have an output, which is G of H. So this is a machine, and the machine there is what? Is the H plus 2. So for example, when you put 1 here into this machine, it will be 1 plus, this is 2. It will be 1 plus 2, then it will give you 3. So function is just like it maps the inputs and the outputs together. it shows a relationship between inputs and output. In mathematics, you can equate